Hey y'all, it's your girl Sia, and I'm back with another video. Y'all, I am finally where I can, for the most part, expect my internet to work. And so I wanted to just do this video really quickly as I wind down for the evening. Now, again, I know that there's a lot of talk about potential drafts, but I want to be clear what was just passed was not necessarily a drafting bill. Like they're not saying that, hey, look, we need this amount of men of these ages between 18 and 26 to go to war. Essentially what they're doing, and I do believe that everything believe that what we seen just passed was the beginning stages to a potential draft in the near future. Well, I don't want to say near future, but within the next 10 to 15 years, right? And I think it's going to happen a lot sooner, but who knows? We'll see. Technically speaking, men are supposed to be naturally registering themselves for the military, and apparently this law has been on the books for quite some time. Knowing today's society, and we're now in like 2024, I can guarantee you that the military does not have as many registered men as they once did. And I don't believe that a lot of men even know that it's kind of their duty as an American citizen to register for war. Now, again, I don't have a sentiment one way or the other. I will say that um, I do believe something is coming down the pipeline, which is why they made this, pass this new bill. Really to get males between the ages of 18 and 26 to register automatically. And that's kind of scary. Like if I was a parent, that would be a little scary for me. If I was a young male, depending on my upbringing, that may be a little scary for me. Because what it seems like is when they say automatically, it's not then you going in and saying, hey, look, I'm a register for such and such. It's automatic enrollment, right? And I'm curious to see how that would play out. But my assumption would be that that's something that's tracked along with like your birth certificate, or not your birth certificate, excuse me, your driver's license or something like that, right? So that's the bill that just passed, which is, national. They made it to where young males, and again, we'll see how it plays out over the course of the next year or so, but where young men are being automatically enrolled in the military. And me personally, I actually am in full support of this. And I know it sounds crazy, because I know that there is a spiritual aspect to any war that we may endure. I also am not I'm not a fan of war, like, but I also recognize one, war makes money, and right now the United States is due for one, believe it or not. We're in a time frame where inflation is at an all-time high. So us going into a new war, hopefully it doesn't happen, but I know everybody talks about World War III. There's a good chance that that's coming just because of the economic state that we're in. um Two, I believe that because you're dealing with a crisis, as I see it, when it comes to males, right? The growth of males, the like where men are going. I believe that if men are not going to sign up to be a part of the military, in my personal opinion, is sign them up, Again, From a parent standpoint, it may be a little different, but from the outside looking in, I see a bunch of men who have a bunch of time on their hands, arguing and going back and forth with women about shit that they shouldn't even be talking about, really. Men who are more concerned with what women do than what they've got going on for themselves. I think it's time. I think that this is the way in which, the government, should there be a war, especially within the next 5 to 10 years, right? Should a war occur, this is a way to give these males purpose, right? And I know it sounds crazy, but if men had, and not all males, I feel like you guys kind of should know what kind of males at this point because it's so spread out, that we're speaking of. But there's a lot of males who have no purpose. They don't have a job. They have nothing going for themselves. And in my opinion, after a certain age, that becomes wasted space, wasted time. Right? So if you're not going to build a family, if you're not going to work a career, you should be doing something other than sitting on your ass all day. And men go to war. That is, I mean, I know that probably in this time and age, men may not want that, but I only know men, to be honest with you, who are men, like who have no problem that the idea of being harmed or losing their safety to protect others around them. They don't even think twice, right? Especially because they're, cognizant and aware of who they have around them, right? So that's number two, right? But I do believe that men, if the space is being wasted and the life itself is being wasted, then why not put the life to work? And if the man is not intelligent enough to recognize when he has nothing going for himself, because that's usually what used to happen is men who, needed discipline, men who, knew that I'm not really the college material type, they would choose the military as an option. But now you're dealing with males who identify, they may not actually say it, and a lot do, but they identify more with women than they do men. And in that scenario, when you have a bunch of males who are really trying to live a life like a woman would live her life, right? And even women can't even live that life anymore. You gotta, like, it's almost like if the men won't do it, the government has to, right? Because just like you guys know, there was that whole article where the CIA had labeled a bunch of males incels. They told you what to look out for, yada yada yada. The problem is the rhetoric is still going. You still have a bunch of men who kind of fall in that diagnoses of an incel, right? And so what do you do with those men? Like, at the end of the day, they know that realistically they can't just commit genocide just for no reason, right? This isn't, way back in the day when there weren't people to hold you accountable. So it's almost like they have to do it a whole other way that is more acceptable to the population of humans, right? So war is a good way to mask it. Again, like I said, war benefits fits. I mean, maybe not in terms of whether or not we're liked, but in terms of money, if we're the ones controlling the money, we're going to make money, right? So realistically, it only makes sense for the US to enter or be ushered into some sort of war over the next 10 to 15 years. And I say that because I know that's huge, but I have a feeling that's coming a lot sooner than what we understand. Um, and I believe that that's part of the purpose because war is one of the number one, it's one of the top three money makers for the US. So I do believe that that's coming, and I believe that this bill was issued as a result of like they know what's coming down the pipeline and they're preparing, right? Basically, but I also believe this is it's a way to control the population, so to speak. It's getting males automatically signed up. Like I said, I'm curious how that works, how that's going to be played out. Does every male that of between that age go to war? Like, what is it? Like, you know what I mean? It just makes me wonder. And obviously, there are going to be some males within that category that do not qualify, like they are not eligible to be in the military. And so that's going to take part too. But I just think that there's two factors to this. Well, maybe quite a few, right? The spiritual aspects of things. But I think this is a beginning to what it reminds me of almost is Hunger Games, right? It's a beginning to an end. And I know that sounds crazy, but I believe that they're using this as, again, it's a way to open the door, and when the right time comes, they gonna let some of these men go play Call of Duty. Basically, right? Go play some Halo, right? Basically, that's what's about to happen. And I, like I said, I don't know that I agree with the war, but I agree if we're gonna have to be in war, electing some of these men that do absolutely nothing for their communities and themselves and anybody else around them, that's a good way to kind of clean some things up quickly, right? So I'm in full support. Like, I know it sounds crazy, but if we must go to war, I am full support of this bill. Again, I can only speak from the outside looking in, not looking from the parent standpoint. Now, if it was my girl, right, and girls were being drafted at that age, I'd probably have a fucking fit because I don't really believe with women going to war anyway. Now, if the woman says she wants to go to war, then okay, as long as it ain't me, right, and my kids, right? But outside of that, I still believe in gender roles in that way. I don't believe that women really belong in war, but it's not my job to tell another woman what she can and cannot do. So that's my take on it, you guys. Again, it's not a draft, meaning that there is no war right now, but obviously there is a war brewing. The United States is like playing with getting involved. I believe the U.S. is already involved. But I think that the U.S. is getting, because again, I believe that we're doing things subtle. It's very subtle in how we're maneuvering right now. But I do believe that they're gearing up for something to come down the pipeline, if that makes sense. And you're going to need your men. The part of the issue, too, I want to be clear, is if anything happened, you know, the movie Civil War, right? If anything happened on our soil, it makes more sense for folks to be militarized. Okay. And what's very interesting is, again, the timeline of everything, because my biggest fear, and something that I've touched on before in different situations, was that, when time comes, let's say a civil war does happen, and it happens like how the movie Civil War was, right? There were different countries very much involved with that incident, okay, and even in the movie. And so my biggest fear is they would attempt to send a lot of the men overseas while America is being seized, right? Because you also have a large military that doesn't speak English. Okay, regardless of where they're from, if they do speak English, they speak a second language, but that's because of where they're from. So we have to remember that there is a large part of the military that are not United States citizens. So if we ship all the men overseas and we've got a bunch of immigrants in the military doing what the government is telling them to do, I mean, I don't know, right? I don't know because you have folks that are here that die hard for their country. So I think it's something to pay attention to. I think that this bill was an alert. It was a way to sound the alarm bells off. I don't know that men, like I said, it would be dependent upon how they usher this out. But with AI and everything, I don't really see how men are going to really be able to get out of this one, right? And they haven't like I'm sure more details will be, unrolled and unfold. But it's an interesting time to be alive, and I think that there's no mistake about this draft bill or whatever, the military bill. So that's all I gotta say on the matter, y'all. Let me know what y'all think down in the comments below. With that being said, I'm out. Peace.